Welcome back, Freelancers Undefeated Rescue, and we're continuing with the Gear Showcase series. We're back in the Interceptor, hanging out in the launch bay. Everybody's checking their scores over here to see how they're doing in the strongholds, but we'll go out on the Bastion and showcase some gear. Okay, so we're continuing with the assault system, and today we are talking about, or going over, Ruthless Stalker. So Ruthless Stalker is an upgraded searching glaive. Thrown gadget seeks out targets, and then the masterwork perk is Striker's Fury. Hitting an enemy increases weapon damage by 110% for 20 seconds. So with Striker's Fury, we've kind of seen this in a couple other builds. Excuse me. We've seen this in a couple other gear pieces that have the same masterwork perk, to where it actually isn't just weapon damage; it's also melee damage. Basically, it's kind of inconsistent with some of the abilities that increase weapon damage, because technically melee, as of like what 1.5, I think 1.5 was the patch where they gave us melee weapons. Originally, we just had whatever melee was available. So I think for the Interceptor, the Blades of Wardening, or the twin blades, was always like the original weapon piece. You couldn't change it out to Deathstalker blades, so you were only able to detonate with melee. You never had the ability to basically, yeah. So there are some inconsistency issues with some of them doing this, where they, even though it says increases weapon damage, it does sometimes count towards melee and sometimes it doesn't. It's one of those things you need to feel out between the masterwork perks themselves for consistency issues. And then the descriptions usually aren't very good, just because they don't have a lot of space to put stuff in here. However, Ruthless Stalker is the most powerful initial gear, like damage, or the initial damage for gear in the game. I think the Colossus has one right behind it. I think it, which one was it? Jared's Hammer is like the second most powerful, but technically the Ruthless Stalker, or sorry, the Interceptor has the most powerful gear strike, or gear strike. I'm wording this all wrong. Has one of the most powerful gear pieces in here for initial damage. So it doesn't have tick damage, nothing like that. The recharge is very punishing at 14, but for this, even though it has a lot of good damage, having a recharge at 14 isn't like the worst thing in the world. And then the one I'm kind of running with has a little bit of gear recharge on it. It's going to have a bit more additional damage. And we're going to roll with that one. And I just kind of want to be upfront with you. In GM1, I'm going to use this build. However, for GM3, I'm going to switch over to this build, mostly because I'm going to showcasing the Masterwork perk and how you want to utilize this. This is a melee build specifically. It's not like the greatest melee build. It's kind of something I threw together at the last minute. But we're going to stick with the Test Interceptor for GM1. Okay, so we are in GM1, and we're back at the Necropolis. So in GM1, using the Ruthless Stalker is going to be pretty powerful in general, because it does so much damage. And I've got 4 charges on it. We'll go ahead and let them spawn in while I'm kind of talking about it. But and then the cool thing is you can hold it, whereas I think some other ones you can't. So I've got 250 gear. Oh, sorry, I do not have 4 charges. I have 1. I was looking at Carifs. That makes a lot more sense. I thought about that when I saw it. So we'll go ahead and check it on their shield. So if you saw that, I was clearly aiming at the storm, and it tracked down. So see that, how like it came back. It's so inconsistent and so weird. I don't know like what is going on with these glaives. I hate the glaives because their tracking is so odd. In GM1, though, it pretty much takes down the Storm Shield and the Storm themselves. The only issue is I have to wait for a recharge, which really sucks. This is my recharge build, by the way. And then as far as like when you throw it, it doesn't, it's only a single point kind of damage. So it's not going to have like blast damage or anything. It's not going to hit multiple targets. It's only going to hit the one. Even if they're grouped up, it doesn't care. And more than likely, it's going to pick which one it hits, instead of you directing it. This one right here is probably going to curve over and hit this guy. Okay, so for weapon damage, let's find a non-shielded enemy type. So I'm doing about 2,000 damage, and then with melee, let's see if we can find. I'm doing about 12,000, right? If it's not a weak point. Yeah, so 12,000. So we'll go ahead and so now we got Striker's Fury. So I got about 12. Well, that was a weak point. Let's try not to get the weak point. So I got about 4,000 now, where I had 2,000 before, and then I think I had 12 before now, and I have 15. Yeah, so 15. So it's definitely increasing both melee and weapon damage. It's just, it sucks because I don't have one with a lot of gear charges, so I can't showcase how it's going to take it out. But in GM1, it's killing everything because I got so aggressive damage charges on it. But this is kind of like why I have two builds that I want to showcase, because the other build isn't going to be really used for like the damage I'm getting out of this, even though it's pretty good, because we're seeing about 53 across the board for mine because it has 250% extra damage. But I'm gonna go ahead. Oh, here we got some armored dudes. Let's go ahead and test it against them. So yeah, 53, and it's taking them out in one shot. But I'm gonna go ahead and clear all these dudes out, and then we'll go up against the ranger. Okay, so it's just me and the ranger now, and then we'll go ahead and test it against their shield. So it does about 53, takes down the shield all the way down, and then it also took a bit of health from them. We'll give it a second. See if I can take their shield down, and then we'll... Okay, so the shield's down. And this should kill them. Yeah. Wasn't even a weak point hit, so... It does a lot of good damage. The only problem is... Well, mine's doing a lot of good damage because I have a max roll for gear damage. One max roll for gear damage. There's still another one I could have had to make it even more powerful. But the problem is the recharge is so punishing on it. It's not the worst recharge in the game, but it's pretty bad. But we'll go in GM3 and kind of showcase some other stuff. Okay, I'm going to go over this build just a little bit. So the video is going to be kind of long if you got to this point. With having Ruthless Stalker on, I'm really going to be trying to proc Striker's strength, so I'm not going to be using this a whole lot. I might use it to take down like shield or do like a little like spurt of damage real quickly with it, but my main goal is to just continuously perk Striker's Fury and keep that on, because this is a melee build. And just to go over the build, I'm using the Death Stalker blades, which any enemy who is below 50% or 50% health or lower is going to get a lot more damage on them. So you're going to be seeing some pretty aggressive damage numbers here, and it's same with the components. All these components are based off of increasing my melee, or just in general giving me a lot of armor. So you're going to see some pretty aggressive numbers here, and it's not attested to Ruthless Stalker, it's attested to the build specifically. Again, this is a melee build. It's not the greatest melee build. It's kind of something I threw together at the last minute because I want to showcase the real gem here with Ruthless Stalker is Striker's Fury. If you want to make this be very, very powerful, the best way to do this is to use the Masterwork perk with it, and then just use this as an additional chunk of damage you can take out of an enemy type. But we'll get to it. Okay, so we are in GM3, and we are back in the Hollow. So this... As much as I hate to do this, this is going to be more of a showcasing of the build itself instead of the gear. But it's just because I'm trying to show, like, there's a viability for this. It's just not really for the gear itself. Actually, hold on. So I'll just kind of showcase, like, how, like, the build is essentially going to just dash in and then just do a bunch of melee, stack up the melee, and then they should be melted pretty quickly, right? Now we'll throw Ruthless Stalker on, and then we'll kind of go up here with all this, and now we should like melt them very quickly. So they're kind of just going down really quickly. And I'm not trying to like brag about my build or anything. I'm just like, this is the way you're going to want to use this, and then because it stays up for so long, it can be really helpful. Like right there, I think it's down, but okay, yeah. So we got that tracking is horrible. That's the other thing, is like you can use this as a bit of burst damage, but it's not going to be very useful like that because it's going to track to the wrong enemy type. And even then, like it hit their feet. Like it's very inconsistent. So I'm just going to go ahead and go through and clear these enemy types out, and then we'll go from there. But the main idea is you just want to keep spamming this around every once in a while. Just keep looking over to the left, checking out your stacks of what you got, or your effects, and then just keep dashing around and getting everything you can. The idea with this is, this build specifically is to have a bunch of status stacks on the left hand side, so that you're just constantly doing incredible damage. You can use this as a weapon build, or for a weapon build. It just, I think it works a lot better for the melee build because it's not really giving you all that much anyways. Oh, there was some, oh crap. All right, let me go ahead and take down this storm. I can't. Everything's pulling me away from the storm. But yeah, if you want that nice little initial like burst damage, it's pretty good for that. I mean, if you can make it efficient like that, then that's the way to go. Okay. It does about half against their shield. We'll go ahead and take their shield down. Oop. Keep moving. They're like right on that ledge. Okay. It does hardly anything against their armor. But see, there's no reason it should be doing anything good against their armor. But I've got a bunch of stacks right now for melee damage, so I see how I'm just melting them. I'm melting them because of the build, not because of Striker's Fury. Was it Striker's Fury? Yeah, Striker's Fury. Or maybe it wasn't. What was it? Sorry. Let me get in here real quick. We'll just talk about the gear too. Yeah, it was Striker's Fury. Okay. It really wasn't that, because we were only seeing about a 2,000 damage jump on all of our initial damage, like as far as like the weapon damage went and melee damage. It was really the build that did it for me here, because there are builds that have synergy. But let's go over some box checking before I get on the 10-minute rant that I usually have, which I always chop down, by the way. It won't actually be 10 minutes. So is it efficient? Yeah, is it efficient? Sorry, that wasn't a yes, it is. It's me just thinking mentally. So here's some efficiency things. See, this is one of the few glaives you can kind of, like, I'm just holding it right now. I'm not actually throwing it. Where with some of the other ones, like as soon as you press the action button for it, it immediately launches. You cannot hold it. So that's really good. And it does try to track two targets better than all the other glaives. Like, the glaives have probably some of the worst tracking in the game. This one does try to track a little bit better. But it tracks to what it wants to. So if you're looking at an enemy type and you're right on them, it's going to track to whatever's closer. It doesn't matter. I mean, I remember, I think we saw it in GM1. It took that like aggressive left turn to an enemy type over there, even though I was pointing out an enemy type over here. So like, it just turned right over here and hit them. I was like, okay. So like, as nice as it is for that burst damage, it's kind of very inconsistent, and you have little control over it. I mean, if you really, so that's the right issue of, like, you're going to have to position yourself very specifically, make sure there's no other enemy types like in that area, and then try to like get really close, I guess, just to guarantee you're going to get that hit, which seems not so efficient to me. And then the recharge is very punishing. That was the biggest issue I had with it, is that I had to wait so long for the recharge to come back, because I don't have many charges on mine. I have 2 damage rolled ones, and that's kind of it. So that didn't really help out too much. Yeah. And then, like, I don't know. Like, in comparison to some of the other gear in here, so it's one of those. It's not a primer. It's not a detonator, right? So I guess Bitter Harvest would be the closest comparison, even though I feel like the cluster mines and the glaives were completely different. They do work completely different. I don't feel like it's a fair comparison, even though they do share the comparison of neither one of them are primers or detonators for the assault system. Yeah, I don't think there's anything really to compare to. I guess if you're just trying to squeeze out that little bit more of weapon damage or armor, or sorry, not armor, weapon damage or melee damage, I think it works. Okay, so I'm going to say this works a lot better for a melee build over a weapon build, because as you can see, like, it's not like other gear pieces where you can just throw them, and as long as they hit something that they activate the perk, you actually physically have to hit an enemy type. So if you're using like a sniper rifle build or a scout rifle build or something like that, anything other than Shaper, what was the Shaper one? I'll go in here real quick. So we'll just go over some of the weapon types real quick. So if you're trying to use use it for like Truth Tarsus kind of build, I think it's going to be hard to use because it's going to have to track to an enemy type really far away, and I don't know consistency wise if it's going to be able to hit them. However, if you're using the Shard Storm Interceptor build, you're probably going to have a lot better luck with that one. That is the preferred, from what I understand, the preferred and better version of an Interceptor weapon build. So you could go that route. That route is definitely viable. Well, we're still in efficiency, but like that over like this would make more sense. So for weapon build, I think this is really the only weapon build for it. I could be wrong. There might be a different one that other people are using, but typically that's kind of going to be the way you're going to go. But I think for melee in general, it's going to be a bit better because then you don't have to worry about reloading or having, I don't know. I just think it'll be easier to use for a melee build because you just every once in a while just toss it out and then go back to doing some melee. Where with a weapon build, you kind of gotta you'd throw it and then you would launch and then try to reload. I don't know. I think it's a little bit more complicated, but that's still a very good build. My preference is melee build. But at the same time, like now you're not really using the gear. You're just trying to get the Masterwork perk to proc, which that Masterwork perk is on weapons and other gear pieces. So is it what makes it more viable over, or so what makes it? It's just not very efficient because you're not really using it that much. And then so I'm not going to say it's very efficient. Is it viable? Well, because I'm showcasing this build and talking about other builds, it's definitely viable. But it's only viable in its Masterwork perk. The burst damage is nice to have every once in a while. So if you just really want something with that little, like your build is just not getting it done, and you just need to get that little bit of extra damage on your enemy types, or you're having trouble taking down shields, this might be able to do it. So I mean, it's definitely viable, but mostly because of its Masterwork perk, not necessarily the damage it's doing, even though it is a decent amount of damage. Combos though typically do a lot more damage, so that's where I'm like kind of not so sure that this is very viable. But because it has a decent Masterwork perk and it's not too hard to get, it's really the recharge you're waiting on. If you get one with a lot of charges, this could actually be really, really good. So yeah, I'll say it's viable. And then is it fun? Well, this is one of, like, out of all the gear that I've showcased for fun, I'm going to say this one is probably going to be the highest level of it depends on the end user or the person using it, because it depends on the build, because it's going to be more based on a build than on just using it on its own, right? It's really not hard to use. The thing I don't like about it is, even though you can toss it and it'll probably track to an enemy type, if you're trying to track to a specific enemy type, that's where it's going to really not be fun, because you're expecting it consistently to go where whatever you've got your basically your marked or not marked, whatever you're looking at, you're expecting it to go to that. But as we can see, it would track to other enemies like right next to me, or make like 90-degree turns to something else. So that's why I don't think it's going to be fun to use, but I think it'll be. It's not going to be a hindrance, and that's where fun for me is like, no, it's not fun if it's a hindrance. So it's not necessarily a hindrance. It's just inconsistent. So I'm just kind of like middle ground with the fun. It sort of kind of is fun, but not really. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's kind of where I am with it. That's going to be up to you. You're just going to have to play around with it and see how you feel like if it's fun or not. That's not something I can tell you like you're going to have fun with it, because I just you can't do combos with it, so it's not going to be applying to the combo system, and it's kind of inconsistent. But the Masterwork perk procking is actually pretty easy. It's actually not hard at all. You just have to make sure you hit an enemy type, which more than likely it will, because it likes to do whatever it wants when you let it go. So yeah, I'm gonna say it's kind of middle ground fun. Nothing really fun about it, and it's not like detrimental to where it's not gonna be fun. I'm gonna go ahead and give it the thumbs up, but I'm gonna tell you right now, like, I don't use this in any builds. I messed around with it for a week trying to make several builds for it, and it's definitely there. That's the only reason I'm giving thumbs up, because you can use this in several builds. That's it. That's the only reason. It's not really that fun for me. And then there are some issues I see with it, some limiting issues that kind of make it not. I just see other things I can go with. So yeah, I'll give it a thumbs up for now because, like I said, it's not like one of those niche builds where you're stuck with one thing. You can do several. But I'm kind of just going on again like I do, and I always talk about. I always do anyways. I'm gonna go ahead and end the video there. But I'm Defeated Rescue, and I hope to see you guys out in Bastion.